In this module, we're going to dive deeper into solutions. You've already been familiar with solutions because you've been working with them some in the other parts of the Power Platform courses. In this module, we're going to build on that fundamental knowledge that you've had and dive deeper into how you use them with projects and how you go about deploying them and some of the options that you can know when you're working with the different types of solutions. And we'll explain all that as we go through this module. Now, as you've already probably figured out, solutions are a container to track the changes that you make in the common data service. So when you create a new entity, when you create a new attribute, when you create any of the other components that you can create in the context of a solution, all those are tracked as part of the current solution that you're working with when you could create those elements. You can add into those containers existing items that exist in other solutions. We'll talk more about what happens when you do those actions. Solutions are how we transport and install changes in the target environment. So from development to test to production, from development to other development instances, these are ways that we can move things around. And we'll talk about some of the different options you have when you're moving from dev, test to production and what you should plan to do to make sure that you have a complete representation of your changes when you move between those environments. Now, solutions are also how Dynamics 365 applications are installed, as well as third-party applications when you purchase them through AppSource and install them into your environments. Now, let's talk a little bit about types of solution. There are two types of solutions that you can work with when you're working with the solutions in the Power Platform. The first one is an unmanaged solution. Unmanaged solutions are used primarily during development. They are changeable, meaning that you can make modifications to them, to the components directly in them. The other type is managed. Managed is what you export and import into non-development environments. Managed solutions are locked down, meaning that you don't change them directly, but you can make changes to some of the components in that. And we'll explain all that as we dive deeper in this topic. You'll also notice when you create a new CDS environment that there are two solutions that are there to start with. One is the default solution and the other is the Common Data Services default solution. The default solution contains all the components that are in the environment. So if you open that up, you'll notice it could have hundreds, if not thousands, of components listed in there. Generally, you will not be working in the default solution, but it is useful to see all the components that are available. The Common Data Services default solution is automatically created for you, and it's created empty, meaning that there's no components in it. It's there to make it easy for somebody that's not building a project or something special, could easily do some customizations, and they just automatically end up in there because if you go to Data, Entities, create a new entity, that's the solution that's hooked up to when you create it from that Data tab on the left-hand navigation. Now, the best practice that we feel is to go create a custom solution. Using the plus new solution in the top command bar, you can create a new solution that you put all your components for your project in, and that's what gets deployed from test to production when you deploy. And we'll talk more about some of the reasons that you want to do that as we go through the rest of this topic. Now let's talk about the solution components. The solution components are what are tracked by the solution. They're tagged or categorized so that you can have the individual items associated with the solution grouped by meaningful types. For example, entity, web resources, dashboards are all component types. Component types also include applications, model-driven applications, as well as Canvas. They also include flows, as well as security components and other developer assets. Some components are subcomponents. For example, entities have forms, views, charts, and fields all as subcomponents. That means that when you add an entity existing, you can choose those subcomponents individually. We'll talk more about how to work with these subcomponents when we're talking about adding and removing things from a solution. Now, the one thing that is not included that oftentimes people look for is the ability to include reference data. Reference data could be a list of locations, a list of languages that somebody speaks, anything that's static data that goes along with the solution. Oftentimes, this data may move from dev to test to production, or from a master instance that contains all the reference data, but it doesn't move as part of a solution. You'll find that we have a tool available to us, the configuration migration tool, that can help us in moving reference data, and you can combine that with the package deployer so that you can deploy your packages, your solutions, as well as the data in all one installer when you go to do that install into the other environments. We'll talk more about that as we get deeper into this topic. As you add components to the solution components can depend on other assets. For example, if you create a dashboard that has a list of opportunities on it, opportunity is an entity that comes with Dynamics 365 for sales. That dashboard component is dependent on the entity being present when the solution is installed. Solution components can also be required by other assets. In fact, you can look at the dependencies of a particular item in the solution by using the Show Dependencies menu option. This will show you what it depends on and what it is required by for other assets. We'll find that as we talk about removing solutions, this becomes very important because you can't remove something that others depend on. We'll also be diving deeper into a concept called solution layering. Solution layering describes what happens in an environment when you have multiple solutions installed in it. You can have multiple managed solutions as well as unmanaged, and ultimately these are all combined together for what the user actually sees. We'll talk about what happens when solutions are installed, when solutions are patched, when solutions are removed, and what the user sees when all these actions happen as we get deeper into this module.